international specimens back? Because nowadays it's
got-
really difficult to.
Yeah, it's gotten much tougher, but it's doable, and we bring stuff in all the time. I mean, you have to basically. There's a lot more laws. It's all, it's regulated by a variety of different departments. Homeland Security is the umbrella for the whole thing now, but Fish and Wildlife Service is a big one. USDA also is a big one. CDC. We have to have permits from all those to bring it in. So that's a big part of my job is just keeping all those permits straight. But we are the repository for all the Mexican gray wolf work that's going on. So we have, we work very closely with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Endangered Species. I mean, we're a big resource for them. We're a big resource for them figuring out when illegal wildlife shipments come in, exactly what the stuff is. They'll come to us as a reference.
Oh, cool.
We're a big resource for OMI, for the Office of Medical Investigator over here. They use us all the time to figure out whether that bite, whatever, corpse was found in the woods was a dog or a bear, or things like that. All kinds of weird stuff.
So, as I explained, most of the teachers are working in labs looking for energy technologies that will not be polluted with respect to greenhouse gases. What would you want their students to know?
Well, they should know that obviously climate change is real, that is not a debate anymore. That's well documented. That climate change is having a major impact on natural populations, and that is species under a warming climate have to either move, and they can move up in elevation, or they can move farther north. It's a lot harder to move farther north. Or they have to adapt, meaning they have to somehow, that's a strong selective pressure, to warmer, and in our case drier conditions, or they go extinct. So they die. So that's the MAD, MAD, right? Move, adapt, or die. And that all of these species are facing those kinds of stresses right now, in one way or another. And all we're trying to do is understand how they are responding to those kinds of stresses, and what species are most of most concern, and are most critically imperiled.
Why is it harder to move north than move up in elevation?
Because it's about, to get the same thing, I think it's about 1,000 feet in elevation, something like 150 miles north. Mm-hmm. So it's, for a lot of these species, small species, it's hard. But changing conditions does, impact species in a lot of different ways. With drying conditions, a lot of these bats are finding that their water holes are no longer available to them, and so they may have to go farther, or they may have to change where their roost sites are because their water sources may not be available anymore. The species we're most concerned about in New Mexico are the mountaintop species, what we call the alpine species, because alpine is very limited in New Mexico, and it's probably going to go away on a lot of the mountaintops, and so things like pika are of concern, marmots would be of concern. Right? Some species of chipmunks. Those are the things we, are most immediate. But again, we don't know. I mean, we don't know how these things are going to play.
Do you guys work with plant people, because clearly plants don't have the advantage of legs, and so if a certain mammal species is dependent on a particular food source, and that food source isn't going to move, how do?
Yeah, for sure. So that could be part of the adapt. Things may change their food source, but we're actually looking at that in the Arctic quite a bit right now, at the interface between the boreal forest and the tundra, right? So you have tree line, what they call tree line. You see tree line in mountains, but you also see it as you go to high latitudes, and beyond the tree line is the tundra. And we just actually published a paper in Nature Climate Change about how tundra species are probably going to respond to climate change in the next 80 years, with probably several of them winking out. Because the problem with tundra in Alaska is that north of the tundra is the Arctic Ocean, right? And terrestrial mammals don't do very well when they're pushed into the ocean, and that's what's going to happen in all these places. So some species can adapt, some species can change perhaps what they're feeding on, but really it's not only the plant, it's also their competitors that might move in, right? So a lot of those tundra species like the shrews and the voles that we look at, they have competitors that are in the forest that do better in the forest, and so if the forest slowly moves farther north, then they're probably not going to do as well.
Could you repeat the part that you were saying about this collection relative to Smithsonian and tissues and?
Yeah, so the collection here is in the top 5 largest on the planet for mammals, and the tissue collection that goes with this, which was started in 1978, is actually the largest for mammals on the planet. The Smithsonian didn't start collecting tissues until about a decade ago, so they got into the game a little late. And so although their collections are older and much larger, these collections provide a little bit different resource for people that do molecular genetics, or people that do stable isotopes, or people that look at mammals to probe for viruses and zoonotic disease and those sorts of things. And so this collection's been really important for a lot of sort of the emerging new scientific disciplines.
Stable isotopes. Will you say more about that, please?
You're
So-
getting a new center in that, right?
Yeah, so stable isotopes are really cool because you can figure out a number of different things about the ecology of species, particularly their diet, and how diet, for example, has changed through time. But to do that, you have to have the samples collected in the past, right? And so they use different parts of the specimen to look at different stable isotopes. Some of the tissues will retain their isotopic signature for a shorter amount of time. Other tissues will store it for a longer period of time. So it tells you a little bit about seasonality. So there's just a number of different things that scientists or questions scientists can ask related to how conditions may be changing in different species, or how things are changing across space as well, right? So things on the coast, for example, may have different diet than things in the away from the coast. But again, all of these technologies are sample limited. And the questions are time limited unless you have the samples that go back in time.
Mm-hmm.
And our big questions are all about time that I see right now.
Can you tell me why it's so important to have all the diversity of these different species?
Yeah. Well, have you ever been to Kansas?
No.
How come? It's not a place you really wanted to go, right? It's kind of a monoculture, and I've got friends in Kansas, and I like Kansas, but it's not that exciting. What I find really exciting about our planet is that it's got all this great diversity on it, and that there's all these great things happening. I'm an evolutionary biologist. I'm really excited to sort of understand how things have evolved through time. And if you take away 90% of my diversity, then it's not near as interesting for me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a pretty selfish reason. There's a lot of other great reasons to have diversity, and that is we know that diversity is important in natural systems, and we know that natural systems are really important to humans for things like clean water. So a number of our major cities depend on functioning ecosystems to provide clean water to them, and in the future clean water is going to be a hugely limiting resource on our planet. But we still don't understand a lot of how those ecosystems function or how this diversity all plays out, and that's why it'd be nice to do that before we lose it.
Mm-hmm.
What is your opinion on ecosystem